The US-China trade war has been quite the roller coaster. Donald Trump slapped tariffs on China. Beijing fired back. Trump doubled down. 145% tariffs on Chinese goods up to 245% on some items. 245% tariffs. China hit back harder. And the cycle began in February. It continued for 2 months. Trump expected China to blink, but they held on. So, the US, it seems, is starting to fold. First, they rolled back tariffs on consumer electronics, and now they're pushing for a trade deal with China. Reports suggest the US has reached out to the Chinese, but is a deal really in the works? Let's look at where things stand. Last week, Donald Trump gave an interview to the Time magazine. He said Xi Jinping had called him. China immediately rejected this claim. They said no such call had taken place. Then on the 24th of April, Trump made another claim. He said that the US and China are talking. Can you clarify with whom the US is speaking with China? They're saying it's big news that trade talks are happening.
Can you clarify with whom the US is speaking with China? They're saying it's big news that trade talks are happening.
Well, they had a meeting this morning, so I can't tell you. It doesn't matter who they is. We may reveal it later.
Well, they had a meeting this morning, so I can't tell you. It doesn't matter who they is. We may reveal it later. Who are these people? What are they talking about? The US president gave no details. Then came a prompt denial from Beijing.
他们凭空作牌
They make up bargaining chips out of thin air, bully and go back on their words, which makes everyone see one thing more and more clearly. That is, the so-called reciprocal tariffs severely go against historical trends and economic laws, impact international trade rules and orders, and seriously impair the legitimate rights and interests of countries.
国际贸易规则
China said no such talks were taking place. In fact, Beijing called it bullying. They make up bargaining chips out of thin air, bully, and go back on their words, which makes everyone see one thing more and more clearly. That is, the so-called reciprocal tariffs severely go against historical trends and economic laws, impact international trade rules and orders, and seriously impair the legitimate rights and interests of countries. On April 28th, Trump's Treasury Secretary was asked about this. He said the onus was now on China, that they must dial down tensions. So, Washington was constantly changing its stance. Beijing was constantly denying talks, and they kept going back to square one, a trade war between the world's two biggest economies. But now there seems to be some sort of a dawn. Chinese media claims that the US has reached out. They contacted Beijing through multiple channels to talk tariffs. And what has China's stance been like? Well, they haven't said anything explicitly, but their state media is softening its position. They say that there is no harm in talking, that engaging with the United States is okay. So there are some signs of a truce, or they're working towards a truce, but it's not happening fast enough because Trump's tariffs were announced last month. And since then, the US economy has been reeling. It has contracted for the first time in 3 years. The GDP decreased by 0.3% in the first quarter. Inflation is soaring, and it is all because of Trump's tariffs. US businesses are yet to feel the full impact of it. But the tensions have already hit exports, especially that of soybean. Cargo shipments from China have also plummeted. But Trump remains confident. He says it is Beijing that will feel the blow. I know that China is doing very poorly right now. I just saw some reports coming out, and I don't want that to happen to China. I like the president a lot, President Xi. I don't want it to happen. I was actually saddened to hear it, but they are getting absolutely hammered in China. But is China really feeling an impact? President Xi Jinping says Beijing won't back down. China's foreign ministry even released a video. It said it would never kneel down to the United States. The US has stirred up a global tariff storm and deliberately targeted China, playing a 90 days pause game with other nations. Kneeling only invites more bullying. China won't kneel down. But what about the economic impact? Well, right now, Chinese businesses are looking beyond America. They're choosing other markets like South America and West Asia. But that does not mean that the Chinese economy is immune to all of this. There is a slowdown in manufacturing in China. Export orders have plunged. So the first signs of damage are there. It could only get worse in the coming days and weeks. So where does that leave us? Right now, both countries are stuck in a strange kind of limbo. The US is trying to look tough, but it's clearly hurt hunting for an off-ramp. China is pretending to not care, but make no mistake, it is watching every move. Both economies are bleeding. Neither wants to be the first to blink, but someone will have to. Now, we don't know who that will be, not yet. But if you squint at the signs, they seem to point to Washington. In this first round, America came calling. China let the phone ring. And sometimes in diplomacy, as in dating, that says everything.